Jack Morrison stood at the edge of the military training field, holding his old rifle close to his chest. The weapon was heavy in his hands, much heavier than the new guns everyone else carried. It was an M1 Garand rifle over 300 years old. His great-great-great-grandfather had carried this same rifle during World War II on Earth. The metal was worn smooth in places where generations of Morrison men had gripped it, but Jack kept it clean and working perfectly. Around him, other soldiers were showing off their new weapons. These guns could shoot beams of light that could cut through steel. Some had smart bullets that could turn corners to hit targets. Others had energy shields that popped up from the gun itself. The weapons hummed with power and glowed with blue lights. They looked like something from a science fiction movie. Jack's rifle looked like it belonged in a museum. Captain Lisa Hayes walked over to where Jack stood. She was the leader of the 47th Space Regiment, and she was not happy about what she saw. Her boots crunched on the gravel as she approached. Her uniform was perfect, and her face showed she was annoyed. "Morrison," she said, looking at his rifle like it was a piece of garbage, "you do know we are going to fight aliens, right? Real aliens with real weapons that can destroy entire cities. That old thing you are holding might be better off hanging on a wall somewhere." The other soldiers around them started to laugh. Danny Clark was standing nearby with his new ion cannon. The weapon was twice as big as Jack's rifle and had a computer screen on the side. Danny shook his head and grinned. "My little sister's water gun would be more useful than that piece of junk," Danny said. More soldiers laughed. "What are you going to do, Morrison? Throw it at them?" Jack looked at Danny and then at Captain Hayes. He did not get angry. He never got angry. His grandfather had taught him that anger made you stupid, and stupid soldiers died fast. "Yes, ma'am," Jack said to Captain Hayes. "I understand you are worried. But this rifle has never let down a Morrison in a fight. Not once in over 300 years? Lieutenant Commander Ryan Burke walked over, holding a tablet computer. He was reading the list of soldiers going to the war zone. When he saw Jack's rifle, he stopped reading and stared. "Morrison, I think you should work in the supply department instead," Burke said. "We cannot have our soldiers going into battle with weapons that do not work. This is not a game. People will die if they do not have proper equipment." Jack stood up straighter. "Sir, I have gotten perfect scores in every combat test. The rifle may be old, but it still shoots straight. I can hit a target at 800 yards with iron sights." "Iron sights?" Burke looked confused. "What are iron sights?" "The metal pieces on top of the gun that help you aim, sir. No computers, no electronics, just your eyes and steady hands." Burke and Hayes looked at each other. Burke shook his head. "Morrison, modern combat is not about steady hands. It is about technology. Your rifle does not have targeting computers. It does not have smart bullets. It cannot shoot through armor or energy shields. How do you expect to fight aliens with that?" Jack looked down at his rifle. The wood stock was dark with age and oil. The metal was black, not shiny like the new weapons. There were no lights, no screens, no buttons. Just a trigger, a sight, and a place to put bullets. "I do not know much about aliens, sir," Jack said, "but I know this rifle. My family has been fighting with it for generations. It has never failed us." The other soldiers were listening now. Some were still laughing, but others looked curious. Amy Johnson, who carried a plasma rifle that cost more than most people made in a year, stepped closer. "Morrison, how does that thing even work?" she asked. "I do not see any power cells or charging ports." Jack smiled a little. "It does not need power, Amy. You put a bullet in the chamber, pull the trigger, and gunpowder explodes. The explosion pushes the bullet out of the barrel really fast. When the bullet hits something, it makes a hole." "That is so primitive," Danny said. "My ion cannon can shoot a beam that is hotter than the sun. Your gun just throws little pieces of metal." "Yes," Jack agreed. "That is exactly what it does." The conversation was interrupted by a loud alarm. Red lights started flashing all around the training field. A voice came over the speakers. "All soldiers report to the loading dock immediately." The transport ship UCS Defender is ready for departure. This is not a drill. The mood changed instantly. The laughing stopped. Everyone knew what this meant. They were going to war. Captain Hayes looked at her soldiers. You heard the announcement. Get your gear and move. We ship out in 1 hour. As the soldiers scattered to get their equipment, Jack carefully slung his rifle over his shoulder. He picked up his old canvas bag that held his bullets and cleaning supplies. The bag was also old, also passed down through his family. Danny Clark caught up with him as they walked toward the transport ship. Jack, I am serious. You should get a real weapon. I've heard about these aliens. They have technology we have never seen before. Their ships are bigger than our cities. They have weapons that can destroy planets. Jack nodded. I've heard the same stories, Danny, but I also know that every Morrison who carried this rifle came home from war. Maybe that means something. Or maybe it means you have been lucky, Danny said. Luck runs out, Jack. Technology does not. They reached the transport ship, which was huge and black against the stars. Soldiers were walking up the ramp, carrying their weapons and gear. Jack could see the worry on their faces. Everyone knew about the aliens called the Zephyrians. They had appeared 6 months ago at the edge of human space. Their ships were like nothing humans had ever seen, covered in crystals that seemed to bend light around them. 3 human fleets had already fought the Zephyrians. All 3 fleets had been destroyed. The aliens' weapons went right through human armor like it was paper. Their ships had shields that blocked every weapon humans had. Tried to use as Jack walked up the ramp, he heard soldiers talking about the previous battles. They spoke in quiet voices, but he could hear the fear. I heard the plasma cannons did nothing to their shields, one soldier said. The missiles just bounced off, said another. How are we supposed to fight something we cannot even hurt? Jack found a seat on the transport ship and sat down. He put his rifle between his knees and closed his eyes. Around him, soldiers were checking their weapons, reading technical manuals, and talking about tactics. Sergeant Mike Torres sat down next. To him, Torres was a good soldier, a veteran of the Mars colonial wars. He looked at Jack's rifle and shook his head. Morrison, I have got an extra plasma rifle if you want to ditch that antique, Torres said. I am serious. I would rather have you alive with a modern weapon than dead with a family heirloom. Jack opened his eyes and looked at Torres. Think? You, Sergeant, but I will stick with what I know. My great-great-great-grandfather carried this rifle when he stormed the beaches in France. My great-great-grandfather carried it in Korea. My great-grandfather carried it in Vietnam. My grandfather carried it on Mars. My father would have carried it too, but he died in a training accident when I was young. Torres was quiet for a moment. I did not know about your father. I'm sorry. He taught me everything he could before he died, Jack said. How to clean the rifle, how to load it, how to aim. He said the rifle was not just a weapon. It was a responsibility. Each Morrison who carried it had to prove worthy of it. The transport ship's engine started up with a deep rumble. Jack felt the ship lift off from the ground. Through the small windows, he could see the stars getting closer. Well, Torres said, I guess we will find out if you are worthy when we meet these aliens. Jack nodded and closed his eyes again. In his mind, he could hear his father's voice teaching him to shoot. Breathe in, breathe out, hold it, squeeze the trigger slow and steady. The rifle will do the rest. The transport ship carried them toward the unknown, toward an enemy that had already proven human technology was not enough. But Jack Morrison was not worried about technology. He was thinking about his family, about the rifle in his hands, and about the simple truth his grandfather had taught him long ago, that sometimes the old ways work because they are based on things that never change. The UCS Defender dropped out of hyperspace with a shudder that ran through the entire ship. Jack Morrison felt his stomach lurch as the artificial gravity adjusted. Around him, soldiers grabbed their weapons and checked their equipment one more time. Through the small windows, Jack could see a planet that looked like Earth, with blue oceans and green forests. But this was New Colorado, and it was under attack. Listen up, soldiers, Captain Hayes announced over the ship's communication. System. We are approaching the drop zone. Intelligence reports that the Zephyrians have built a base in the mountain region. Our job is to find it and destroy it before they can launch more attacks on human colonies. Jack looked out the window again. He could see the alien ships in orbit around the planet. They were beautiful and terrible at the same time. The ships looked like they were made of crystal and metal twisted together. They reflected light in strange ways, making them hard to look at directly. "Those are the ships that destroyed the Third Fleet," Danny Clark said quietly. He was sitting across from Jack, his ion cannon resting on his lap. "I heard they did not even use their main weapons. Just their smaller guns were enough to cut our battleships in half." Sergeant Torres was walking between the seats, checking on his soldiers. "Morrison, you sure you do not want to reconsider that rifle? We are about to face an enemy that has technology we do not understand." Jack checked his rifle one more time. The action was smooth, the barrel was clean, and he had 8 bullets loaded in the clip. He had 20 more clips in his pack, each holding 8 rounds. 160 bullets total. It seemed like a lot until he thought about fighting an entire alien army. "I'm sure, Sergeant," Jack said. "This rifle has never failed a Morrison." The transport ship shook as it entered the planet's atmosphere. Jack could feel the heat building up outside as they fell through the sky. The pilot's voice came over the speakers. 30 seconds to drop zone. All soldiers prepare for combat landing." Jack stood up with the other soldiers. They moved toward the exit ramp, checking their weapons and adjusting their gear. Amy Johnson was in front of him, her plasma rifle humming with power. Behind him, Danny Clark was activating his ion cannon's targeting system. The ship touched down with a hard bump. The exit ramp opened, and Jack could smell the air of New Colorado. It smelled like pine trees and fresh rain. For a moment, it almost felt peaceful. "Move out," Captain Hayes ordered. "Stay alert. The enemy could be anywhere." The soldiers ran down the ramp and spread out across a clearing in the forest. Jack found cover behind a fallen log and looked around. The trees were tall and thick, creating shadows everywhere. Birds were singing in the branches, and he could hear water running somewhere nearby. It was hard to believe this peaceful place was a war zone. "Alpha Squad, take point," Hayes ordered through the radio. "Beta Squad, follow 50 meters behind. Charlie Squad, bring up the rear. Keep your eyes open for any sign of alien activity." Jack was in Beta Squad with Torres, Danny, and Amy. They moved through the forest carefully, trying not to make noise. The ground was soft with fallen leaves that crunched under their boots. Every few minutes, someone would stop and listen, but all they heard were normal forest sounds. They had been walking for about an hour when Amy suddenly held up her hand. Everyone stopped and crouched down. She was pointing at something ahead, through the trees. "I see movement," she whispered into her radio. "About 100 meters ahead. Something is moving between the trees." Jack looked in the direction she was pointing. At first, he did not see anything. Then he caught a glimpse of something that did not belong in the forest. It was tall and thin, and it moved in a way that was not quite human. "Zephyrians," Torres whispered. "At least 3 of them. They have not seen us yet." Captain Hayes' voice came through the radio. "All squads, we have contact. Prepare for engagement. Remember, these aliens have personal shields. You will need to concentrate your fire to break through their defenses." Jack could see the aliens more clearly now. They were tall, maybe 8 feet high, with long arms and legs. Their skin looked like it was made of the same crystal material as their ships. They carried weapons that looked like staffs, but Jack could see energy crackling around the tips. "Alpha Squad, open fire," Hayes ordered. The forest exploded with light and sound. Plasma bolts and ion beams filled the air, cutting through trees and turning leaves to ash. The aliens reacted instantly, raising their staff weapons and firing back. Their energy blasts were different from human weapons. They made a sound like thunder and left the air smelling like burning metal. Jack watched as the human weapons hit the aliens. The plasma bolts and ion beams struck some kind of invisible barrier around each alien and simply disappeared. The aliens were not even slowed down. The shields are holding, Danny shouted over the noise of battle. Our weapons are not getting through. More aliens appeared from deeper in the forest. Jack counted at least 6 of them now, all protected by the same energy shields. They moved forward, firing their weapons at the human soldiers. Fall back, Hayes ordered. Regroup at the landing zone. But as the soldiers tried to retreat, more aliens appeared behind them. They were surrounded. Amy Johnson screamed as one of the alien energy blasts hit a tree next to her. The tree simply vanished, leaving nothing but a pile of ash. These weapons are too powerful, she shouted. How do we fight this? Danny's ion cannon overheated after firing continuously for 2 minutes. Warning lights flashed on the weapons display, and it shut down automatically. This is impossible, he said. Our best weapons cannot even scratch them. Jack watched the battle from behind his log. The other soldiers were firing everything they had at the aliens, but nothing was working. The energy shields around the aliens absorbed every shot. Meanwhile, the aliens were picking off human soldiers one by one with their terrible weapons. Sergeant Torres was trying to coordinate the retreat when an alien energy blast hit him in the shoulder. He fell to the ground, clutching his arm. Torres is down, someone shouted. We need to get him out of here. That was when Jack Morrison stood up. He raised his old M1 Garand rifle to his shoulder and took careful aim at the nearest alien. The creature was about 75 yards away, moving between the trees. Jack could see the energy shield shimmering around it like heat waves. Jack took a deep breath, let half of it out, and held the rest. He lined up the iron sights on the alien center mass, just like his grandfather had taught him. The rifle felt steady in his hands. He squeezed the trigger. The .3006 bullet left the barrel at over 2,700 feet per second. It crossed the distance to the alien in less than 1/10 of a second. The energy shield that had stopped every plasma bolt and ion beam did absolutely nothing to slow down the piece of lead and copper. The bullet hit the alien in the chest and passed completely through its body. The creature looked down at the hole in its chest with what might have been surprise. Then it fell backward and did not move again. The forest became very quiet. All the shooting stopped. Human soldiers and aliens alike stared at the fallen creature. The only sound was the distinctive ping of Jack's rifle ejecting the empty clip. How did you do that? Amy whispered. Jack was already loading a fresh clip into his rifle. Their shields stop energy weapons, he said simply. This is not an energy weapon. He raised the rifle again and fired at a second alien. This one also fell immediately. The bullet went through its energy shield, like the shield was not even there. The remaining aliens looked at each other and then at Jack. For the first time since the battle began, they seemed confused. One of them raised its staff weapon and fired at Jack. Jack dove behind his log as the energy blast destroyed the tree above him. But when he looked up, the aliens were retreating back into the forest. They moved quickly, disappearing between the trees. They are running, Danny said in amazement. The aliens are actually running away. Captain Hayes approached Jack, staring at his rifle like it was made of magic. Morrison, what just happened? How did your bullets get through their shields? Jack checked his rifle and looked around to make sure no more aliens were coming. I think their shields are designed to stop energy weapons, ma'am. They probably never thought about old-fashioned bullets. Dr. Helen White, the expedition science officer, ran over from where she had been hiding. She had a scanner in her hands and was pointing it at the dead aliens. This is incredible, she said. The shield generators are still working, but they only create a barrier against directed energy. Kinetic projectiles pass right through. Kinetic projectiles? Hayes asked. Bullets, ma'am, Jack explained. Things that are thrown or shot. The alien shields can stop laser beams and plasma bolts, but they cannot stop a chunk of metal moving really fast. Torres was sitting against a tree, holding his wounded shoulder. Morrison, you just saved our lives with a 300-year-old rifle. Jack looked at his rifle and then at the dead aliens. I guess sometimes the old ways work because they are based on things that do not change. Physics is physics, whether it is 1943 or 2343. Captain Hayes was already talking into her radio. "Command, this is Hayes. We have made contact with the enemy. I need to speak with Admiral Stone immediately. We have discovered something that could change this entire war." The forward operating base buzzed with activity as word spread about what had happened in the forest. Soldiers who had been preparing for what they thought would be a hopeless battle now gathered around Jack Morrison and his old rifle. Scientists, officers, and combat specialists all wanted to understand how a weapon from the past had succeeded where they're most advanced. Technology had failed. Dr. Helen White had set up her equipment in the command tent, and Jack's M1 Garand rifle lay on a table surrounded by scanning devices. The weapon looked strange among all the high-tech equipment, like a piece of ancient history that had accidentally traveled to the future. "This is remarkable," Dr. White said, looking at her scanner readings. "Zephyrian energy shields create a frequency barrier that stops all directed energy weapons. Plasma bolts, ion beams, laser cannons, even particle accelerators, they all get absorbed or deflected by the shield matrix." Colonel Frank Davis, the commander of all ground forces, leaned over the table, but Morrison's rifle got through. How was that possible? Dr. White pointed to a diagram on her computer screen. "The shields are specifically designed to counter energy-based attacks. But kinetic weapons, physical projectiles, they operate on completely different principles. The bullet from this rifle travels at about 2,700 feet per second. It has mass, momentum, and kinetic energy, but it does not register as a threat to their shield system." Captain Hayes, who had been quiet since returning from the battle, finally spoke. "Are you telling us that our billion-dollar weapon systems are useless? But a rifle that costs less than a fancy dinner can defeat their defenses?" "Not just any kinetic weapon," Dr. White explained. "The specific characteristics of this rifle are important. The bullet weight, the velocity, the trajectory, everything works together perfectly. It is like this weapon was designed specifically to fight the Zephyrians." Jack Morrison stood quietly in the corner of the tent, listening to the conversation. He had cleaned his rifle after the battle and was now holding it across his chest. The weapon felt familiar and comforting in his hands, the same way it had always felt. "Morrison," Colonel Davis called out, "how many more of these rifles do we have in our armory?" Jack shook his head. "None, sir. This is the only M1 Garand in the entire expeditionary force. But back on Earth, there are thousands of them. Museums, private collections, family heirlooms. The M1 Garand was mass-produced during World War II. They made over 5 million of them." The tent became very quiet as everyone understood what this meant. Lieutenant Commander Burke, who had wanted to transfer Jack to the supply department, now looked at him with amazement. "Morrison, we need to get a message back to Earth immediately. If we can get more of these rifles, we might actually have a chance to win this war." Admiral Patricia Stone's voice came through the communication system. "All senior officers report to the command center. We have a priority message from Earth Command." The officers hurried to the command center, leaving Jack alone with Dr. White and her equipment. She looked at him curiously. "Morrison, may I ask you something? Why did you bring this rifle to a space war? Everyone told you it was outdated." Jack thought about the question for a moment. "My family has carried this rifle for generations, ma'am. It went with my great-great-grandfather to France in 1944. It was with my great-great-grandfather in Korea, my great-grandfather in Vietnam, and my grandfather on Mars. Each time people said it was old-fashioned. Each time it brought them home safe." "But you could not have known it would work against alien technology," Dr. White said. "No, ma'am, but I knew it would work. My grandfather taught me that you do not need to understand everything about a tool. To use it properly, you just need to respect it and trust it." Dr. White nodded. "Your grandfather sounds like a wise man. He also taught me that simple things often work better than complicated things. Simple things have fewer parts that can break. Simple things are easier to fix. Simple things do what they are supposed to do." Outside the tent, Jack could hear soldiers talking excitedly about the battle. Word had spread quickly through the entire base. For the first time since the war began, Human soldiers were talking about victory instead of just survival. Danny Clark walked into the tent carrying his ion cannon. The weapon's display screen was dark and there were scorch marks on the barrel from overheating. "Jack, I owe you an apology," Danny said. "I was wrong about your rifle. We all were." Jack looked at his friend. "You do not owe me anything, Danny. We are all fighting the same enemy." "No, I do. I made fun of you for carrying an old weapon. I thought you were being stubborn or foolish, but you were right and I was wrong." Amy Johnson joined them, her plasma rifle slung over her shoulder. "Jack, half the soldiers in this base want to know where they can get rifles like yours. Is there any way to get more of them?" Before Jack could answer, Sergeant Torres entered the tent. His arm was in a sling from where the alien energy blast had hit him, but he was smiling. "Morrison, you will not believe what just happened. I was in the command center when the message from Earth came through. Fleet Command is sending a special transport ship with 200 restored M1 Garand rifles and enough ammunition to fight." "A war," Jack's eyes widened. 200 rifles? "That is not all," Torres continued. "They are also sending volunteers who know how to use them. Collectors, historians, veterans, anyone who has experience with World War II weapons. They are calling it Operation Garand." Dr. White looked up from her equipment. "How long until they arrive?" 3 weeks, Torres said. "The transport ship UCS Heritage is already on its way. Admiral Stone says it is the fastest ship in the fleet." Jack felt a mix of emotions. He was excited that more rifles were coming, but also worried. "Sergeant, do these volunteers know what they are getting into?" "Fighting aliens is not the same as shooting at targets on a range," Torres nodded. "Most of them are veterans, Morrison. They have been in combat before." "And according to the message, one of them is someone special to you." Jack looked confused. "Special to me?" "Your father is coming, son." Jack felt like the ground had shifted under his feet. "My father? But he is 70 years old. He retired from the military 20 years ago. Apparently, when he heard what you had done, he volunteered immediately. The message says he is bringing his own rifle. It belonged to his father, your grandfather." Jack sat down heavily in a chair. He had not seen his father in over a year, not since he had shipped out for basic training. The idea of his father coming to a war zone was both wonderful and terrifying. "There is more," Torres said. "Earth Command is changing our entire strategy. Instead of trying to match Zephyrian technology, they want us to use our own strengths. They are calling it the Historical Weapons Initiative." Amy laughed. "Historical Weapons Initiative? That sounds like something from a museum, not a military operation. Maybe that is the point," Jack said quietly. "Maybe we have been trying so hard to build better weapons that we forgot about the weapons that already work." Dr. White was still studying her scanner readings. "Morrison, I have been thinking about what you said earlier. About simple things working better than complicated things. I think you might be right. The Zephyrian shields are incredibly sophisticated, but they have a weakness because they are so specialized." Colonel Davis returned to the tent, and his expression was serious but hopeful. "Morrison, I have new orders for you. You are being promoted to lieutenant and placed in charge of training our people to use the new rifles when they arrive." Jack stood up. "Sir, I am honored, but I do not know if I am qualified to train other soldiers." "You are the most qualified person we have," Davis said. "You are the only one who has actually used one of these rifles in combat against the Zephyrians. The volunteers coming from Earth will know how to shoot, but they will not know how to fight aliens." Jack looked at his rifle and then at all the people in the tent. A few hours ago, they had been laughing at him. Now they were asking him to lead them. "I will do my best, sir," Jack said. Davis smiled. "That is all any of us can do, Lieutenant. Your best has already saved lives today." As the officers prepared to leave, Jack Morrison stood alone with his thoughts. In 3 weeks, his father would arrive with 200 rifles, just like the one he carried. 200 chances to turn the tide of the war. He thought about his grandfather, who had taught him to shoot with this rifle. He thought about all the Morrison men who had carried it before him. They had faced impossible odds and found a way to win. Now it was his turn to carry on the family tradition. But this time he would not be carrying it alone. The old rifle that everyone had laughed at was about to become humanity's greatest weapon. And Jack Morrison, the soldier they had wanted to transfer to the supply department, was about to become one of the most important people in the war. Sometimes the past holds the key to the future. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. And sometimes the weapon that everyone laughs at is the one that saves the day. 3 weeks later, the transport ship UCS Heritage arrived at New Colorado like a gift from the past. Jack Morrison stood on the landing platform, watching as the massive ship settled down with a rumble that shook the ground. His heart was beating fast, not because of the ship, but because his father was on board. The cargo doors opened with a hiss of escaping air, and Jack saw them. 200 men and women, all carrying rifles that looked just like his. These were not young soldiers, fresh from training. These were older people, some with gray hair and wrinkled faces. They walked like people who had seen combat before, and leading them was Robert Morrison. Jack's father, Robert Morrison, was 70 years old, but he still walked like a soldier. His hair was completely white now, and there were more lines on his face than Jack remembered. But his eyes were the same, sharp and determined. He carried an M1 Garand rifle that was even older than Jack's, the one that had belonged to Jack's grandfather. "Son," Robert said, embracing Jack tightly, "when they told me what you had done, I knew I had to come. Your grandfather would be proud." Jack felt tears in his eyes as he hugged his father. "Dad, you should not be here. This is a war zone. You could get killed." Robert smiled and patted his rifle. "This old gun has kept Morrison men alive for over 300 years. I think it can handle a few more aliens." Behind Robert, the other volunteers were unloading equipment from the ship. Jack saw men and women of all ages, all carrying the same type of rifle. Some looked like they had been museum curators or history professors. Others had the bearing of old soldiers. All of them had volunteered to come to an alien planet to fight in a war. Captain Hayes, who was now Major Hayes after her promotion, approached the group. "Welcome to New Colorado. I am Major Hayes, and this is Lieutenant Morrison, your training officer." An older woman with silver hair stepped forward. She was carrying a rifle and wearing clothes that looked like they came from a historical reenactment. "I am Margaret Stone, retired Marine Colonel. I ran the World War II Living History program back on Earth. We are here to help however we can." A man who looked like he was in his 60s raised his hand. "I am Bill Carter. I have been collecting and restoring these rifles for 40 years. I brought tools and spare parts in case we need to repair anything." Jack looked at all the faces surrounding him. These people had left their comfortable lives on Earth to come fight aliens with old rifles. They believed in what he had discovered, even though it seemed impossible. "Thank you all for coming," Jack said. "I know this is not what any of you expected when you woke up 3 weeks ago, but we have learned something important. Sometimes the old ways work better than the new ways." Major Hayes led the group to the training area that had been set up for them. It was a firing range with targets at different distances, from 50 yards to 500 yards. Jack had spent the last 3 weeks preparing for this moment. "The aliens we are fighting have personal energy shields," Jack explained to the group. "These shields can stop any energy weapon we have. Plasma rifles, ion cannons, laser guns, nothing gets through. But kinetic weapons, bullets, they pass right through like the shields are not even there." Margaret Stone raised her hand. "Lieutenant, have you tested this with other kinetic weapons? What about modern firearms that fire bullets?" Dr. Helen White, who had been studying the alien technology, answered the question. "We tried several modern rifles that fire bullets. The results were mixed. Some worked, but not as well as the M1. Garand, we think it has to do with the specific velocity and mass of the .3006 cartridge." Bill Carter nodded. "The .3006 was designed to be a battle cartridge. It has the right combination of power and accuracy for long-range combat." Jack's father spoke up. "How many aliens are we facing?" Major Hayes looked serious. Intelligence estimates there are about 3,000 Zephyrians on the planet. They have built a fortress in the mountains, and they are using it as a base to launch attacks on human colonies. 3,000 aliens against 200 rifles, someone in the crowd said. Those are not good odds. Jack looked at the person who had spoken. No, they are not. But we have advantages they do not know about. They think they are fighting primitive humans with primitive weapons. They do not expect us to be able to hurt them. The training began immediately. Jack and his father worked together to teach the volunteers how to fight aliens instead of just shooting at targets. The aliens were tall and fast, and they used weapons that could destroy trees and buildings. Do not aim for the head, Jack explained as they practiced. The aliens' heads are small and hard to hit. Aim for the center of their body. The .306 bullet will go all the way through them. Margaret Stone was a natural teacher, and she helped organize the volunteers into squads. Remember, we are not trying to win a shooting competition. We are trying to stay alive and complete our mission. Bill Carter set up a repair station where he could fix rifles that got damaged. These weapons are over 300 years old, he said. They were built to last, but they still need maintenance. During the training, Jack learned about the people who had come to help. There was Sarah Miller, a grandmother who had learned to shoot from her husband before he died. There was Tom Wilson, a history professor who had studied World War II his entire life. There was Lucy Davis, a young woman who had inherited her great-grandfather's rifle and learned to use it for sport shooting. Each person had their own story about why they had come, but they all had one thing in common. They believed that old knowledge was worth preserving, and sometimes old solutions worked better than new ones did. After 2 weeks of training, Major Hayes called Jack into the command tent. Morrison, we have new intelligence about the alien base. They are planning a major attack on the human settlements in the valley. We need to strike first. Jack looked at the map on the table. The alien fortress was built into the side of a mountain, with high walls and energy barriers protecting it. How many soldiers do we have for the assault? 2,000 regular troops with standard weapons, plus your 200 volunteers with the Garand rifles, Hayes said. The plan is for the regular troops to create a distraction while your people get close enough to do real damage. Jack studied the map more carefully. Major, I think we are approaching this wrong. If we use the regular troops as a distraction, the aliens will focus their defenses on energy weapons. They will not be ready for kinetic attacks. What are you suggesting? Let my people lead the assault. The aliens have never faced Garand rifles before. They do not know what to expect. If we can get close enough, we can break through their defenses before they realize what is happening. Hayes looked worried. Morrison, that is a big risk. Your volunteers are brave, but most of them are not trained soldiers. If something goes wrong, they could all be killed. Jack thought about his father, about Margaret Stone, about all the people who had come so far to help. Major, these people did not come here to be safe. They came here to make a difference. Let us do what we came to do? That night, Jack sat with his father outside their tent, cleaning their rifles. The stars above New Colorado looked the same as the stars above Earth, but Jack knew they were far from home. Dad, are you sure about this? Tomorrow could be very dangerous. Robert Morrison looked at his son and smiled. Jack, your grandfather carried this rifle through some of the worst fighting in human history. Your great-grandfather carried yours. Through Korea and Vietnam, we are Morrison men. We do not run from fights, especially when people are counting on us. Jack nodded. I just want to make sure I am making the right decision. A lot of people could die tomorrow because of what I choose to do. Son, leadership is not about making perfect decisions. It is about making the best decision you can with the information you have, and then living with the consequences. Your grandfather taught me that. The next morning, 200 volunteers with old rifles prepared to attack an alien fortress. They were farmers and teachers, historians and mechanics, grandparents and young adults. But they all carried weapons that had been tested in the fires of human history. And leading them was Jack Morrison, the soldier everyone had laughed at. carrying the rifle that had saved his life and might now save them all. The attack began at dawn. Jack Morrison led his 200 volunteers through the forest toward the alien fortress, their old rifles ready for battle. Behind them, 2,000 regular soldiers waited for the signal to begin their own assault. The mountain ahead looked peaceful in the morning light, but Jack knew it hid one of the most dangerous alien bases in human space. "Remember what we practiced?" Jack whispered into his radio. "Stay low, move quietly, and do not fire until I give the signal. We need to get as close as possible before they know we are here." His father Robert was right beside him, moving through the trees like a man half his age. Margaret Stone led one squad on the left, while Bill Carter took his group to the right. Tom Wilson, the history professor, stayed close to Jack with the reserve team. The alien fortress was built into the side of the mountain like a crystal growth. Tall spires reached toward the sky, and energy barriers shimmered around the walls. Jack could see Zephyrian guards moving on the battlements, their tall forms easily visible against the morning sky. "There are more guards than intelligence reported," Margaret Stone whispered through the radio. "I count at least 50 aliens just on this side of the fortress." Jack studied the fortress through his binoculars. The aliens seemed confident and relaxed. They were not expecting an attack, especially not from humans carrying old rifles. Their energy shields flickered around them as they moved, ready to stop any plasma bolts or ion beams that might come their way. "All teams, move to your final positions," Jack ordered. "We attack in 5 minutes." The volunteers spread out around the base of the fortress. These were not trained soldiers, but they moved with purpose and determination. Sarah Miller, the grandmother, checked her rifle one more time. Lucy Davis, the young sports shooter, found a good position behind a large rock. Each person knew that the next few minutes would determine the fate of the war. Jack looked at his watch. "All teams, prepare to fire. Target the guards on the walls first. Take your time and make every shot count." The forest became very quiet. Even the birds seemed to sense that something important was about to happen. Jack raised his old M1 Garand rifle and aimed at an alien guard about 100 yards away. The iron sights lined up perfectly on the target's center mass. "All teams, fire at will," Jack ordered. 200 rifles fired almost at the same time. The sound echoed off the mountain like thunder. The .3006 bullets crossed the distance, too. The fortress in less than half a second each. The alien guards on the walls never knew what hit them. Their energy shields, designed to stop the most advanced human weapons, did nothing to slow down the old bullets. In the first few seconds of the battle, 30 aliens fell from the walls. "Reload and continue firing," Jack shouted. The distinctive ping of empty clips being ejected filled the air as the volunteers loaded fresh ammunition. Inside the fortress, alarms began to sound. More aliens appeared on the walls, firing their energy weapons at the humans below. But they could not see their targets clearly through the trees, and most of their shots missed. The volunteers, however, could see the aliens perfectly. Every time an alien appeared on the walls, a rifle cracked and the alien fell. The defenders of the fortress were being picked off one by weapons they did not understand. "Jack, they are trying to bring up reinforcements," his father called. Out. Robert was firing steadily at aliens trying to reach the wall from inside the fortress. "I can see them moving heavy weapons toward our position." "Bill, can your team get closer to the main gate?" Jack asked through the radio. "Already moving," Bill Carter replied. His group was advancing through the rocks toward the fortress entrance. "Give us 2 minutes and we can hit them from the side." The battle was going better than Jack had hoped, but he knew it would not stay easy. The aliens were starting to understand that their shields were not protecting them. They began to take cover behind the crystal walls of the fortress. "Margaret, how is your ammunition holding up?" Jack asked. "We are doing fine," Margaret Stone replied. "These old rifles do not waste bullets like the modern weapons. Every shot counts." That was when the aliens brought out their heavy weapons. A massive energy cannon rose from the center of the fortress, its crystal barrel crackling with power. It was bigger than anything the humans had seen before, and when it fired, it turned an entire section of forest into ash. "Everyone take cover," Jack shouted. "They have artillery." The energy cannon fired again, and this time it hit closer to the human positions. Trees burst into flames, and the ground shook with the impact. Jack realized that their advantage was disappearing. The aliens might not be able to stop rifle bullets with their personal shields, but they could destroy the forest with their big guns. "Dad, we need to take out that cannon," Jack said. Robert Morrison was already thinking the same thing. "Son, that cannon is too far away for accurate rifle fire. We would need to get much closer." "Then we get closer," Jack decided. "Tom, take half the reserve team and keep firing at the walls. Margaret, Bill, keep the aliens busy. Dad and I are going to get that cannon." Jack and his father left their positions and began moving toward the fortress. They used every piece of cover they could find, staying low and moving fast. The energy cannon fired again, destroying more trees behind them. As they got closer to the fortress walls, Jack could see the aliens more clearly. They were tall and graceful, but they looked confused and frightened. Their advanced technology was failing them against weapons from humanity's past. "There," Robert pointed to a breach in the wall where an earlier energy blast had created an opening. "We can get inside through there." Father and son ran across open ground toward the breach. Energy blasts from alien weapons scorched the earth around them, but they reached the wall safely. Jack could hear the energy cannon charging up for another shot. They climbed through the breach into the fortress. Inside, the walls were made of the same crystal material as the alien ships. Energy conduits ran along the ceiling, providing power to the fortress systems. And in the center courtyard, the massive energy cannon was turning toward the forest again. "Jack, look," Robert pointed to the cannon's base. "There are only 3 aliens operating it. If we can take them out, the cannon stops working." Jack nodded. They had 8 bullets each in their rifles, plus extra clips. It would have to be enough. They moved carefully through the crystal corridors, staying out of sight of the alien guards. When they reached the courtyard, Jack could see the 3 aliens working the energy cannon. They were focused on their task and did not see the 2 humans approaching. "On 3, Jack whispered. 1, 2, 3. Both rifles fired at the same time. 2 of the aliens fell immediately. The third one turned toward them, raising its staff weapon, but Robert's second shot took it down before it could fire. The energy cannon powered down with a low whine. Jack and his father quickly destroyed the control panel with their rifle butts, making sure the weapon could not be used again. "Jack, we need to get out of here," Robert said. "More aliens are coming." They could hear alien voices echoing through the fortress corridors. But when they reached the breach in the wall, they found that the battle outside was over. The remaining aliens were retreating to their ships. Without their heavy weapons and with their personal shields useless against kinetic weapons, they could not hold the fortress. Major Hayes and the regular troops had arrived to help secure the area. "Morrison, report," Hayes called out as Jack and his father emerged from the fortress. "The fortress is ours, ma'am," Jack replied. "The aliens are retreating to orbit." Hayes smiled. "Well done, Lieutenant. Your volunteers performed beyond expectations. We lost only 12 people and we eliminated over 400 aliens." Jack looked around at the volunteers who had followed him into battle. Sarah Miller was helping treat wounded soldiers. Lucy Davis was collecting ammunition from fallen aliens. Margaret Stone was already organizing teams to secure the fortress. These people had come from all over Earth to fight with old rifles against impossible odds. They had won not because their weapons were better, but because they understood that sometimes the simple solution is the right solution. "Dad," Jack said, looking at his father. "Grandfather would be proud." Robert Morrison smiled and patted his old rifle. "Son, he already is. This rifle has seen a lot of battles, but I think this might be the most important one yet." 6 months later, the war was over. The Zephyrian Empire, faced with human forces equipped with kinetic weapons, had agreed to a peace treaty. Jack Morrison was now Colonel Morrison, in charge of the Historical Weapons Division. His old M1 Garand rifle sat in a place of honor in his office, still ready for action if needed. The weapon that everyone had laughed at had become the key to humanity's greatest victory. And Jack Morrison, the soldier they had wanted to transfer to the supply department, had become a hero whose name would be remembered for generations. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. Sometimes the past holds the answer to the future. And sometimes the weapon that everyone laughs at is the one that saves the day.